So, Virginia's latest legislative session. Wow. They set their sights on a huge target, the state's growing housing crisis. But what kicked off as this really ambitious agenda, well, it ended with a split decision. It's a tale of some bold ideas hitting a political wall, while a few smaller victories actually managed to sneak through. Okay, let's get into it and see what really happened.
To really wrap your head around the scale of what lawmakers were facing, you've got to start with this number, 300,000. That's the minimum estimated housing shortage across Virginia right now. It's just a massive gap between the homes people need and the homes that are actually available.
And a shortage that big, it has very real consequences for families. As you can see here, it means 1 out of every 3 households in Virginia is housing cost burdened. What that means is they're spending a huge, often unsustainable, chunk of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. And that squeezes out everything else.
So, how did Virginia try to tackle this whole mess? In this explainer, we're going to walk through the state's housing crunch, take a look at the big zoning idea they proposed to fix it, get into the clash over control that stopped it in its tracks, see what actually succeeded instead, and then finally explore the unfinished debate that's still going on.
All right, first up, Virginia's housing crunch. Look, this isn't some brand new problem, but it has absolutely reached a critical point. It's especially bad in those job-heavy areas like Northern Virginia, right across the river from D.C., where the pressure on housing costs has just been building and building for years.
What's so powerful about this quote from the Virginia Housing Alliance is how it frames the problem. It makes it crystal clear. This isn't just about a lack of buildings. The fundamental issue is that incomes and paychecks simply can't keep up with how fast rents are rising. It's a painful mismatch.
Which brings us to the proposed fix, the big zoning idea. Faced with this crisis, the governor's administration threw its weight behind a couple of really ambitious bills. The idea was to directly boost the housing supply in a way that would have been pretty radical for the state.
So the core of this whole plan was something called by-right development. So what does that actually mean? Well, it's pretty simple. It means if a builder's project follows the rules that are already on the books, the existing zoning code, they can just go ahead and build it. No need for a special, lengthy case-by-case hearing. The goal is to speed things up a lot. And this slide just perfectly captures the vision. I mean, think about all those half-empty strip malls you see, or those huge sprawling office park parking lots. The goal here was to let developers build new apartment buildings on that kind of commercial land, basically transforming these underused spaces into thousands of new homes. But an idea this big was always going to create a big debate. And it sure did. The proposal ran into some serious opposition fast. And it all led to this clash over one central question. Who gets to decide what gets built and where? And this right here really lays out the two sides of the argument. You had supporters saying, look, this is common sense. We have to build housing near where the jobs are to finally get a handle on this shortage. But opponents, mostly local governments, they pushed back, and they pushed back hard. They called it a one-size-fits-all mandate from the state, and they were worried it would strip away their local control over planning for things like traffic, schools, and infrastructure. And this wasn't just some abstract philosophical debate either. You had officials in places like Arlington and Alexandria who had already tried their own local zoning reforms and gotten a ton of backlash from their residents. They were some of the loudest voices raising concerns about a statewide mandate. It just goes to show how tough this issue is on the ground.
For the supporters, though, the failure of this bill was a massive missed opportunity. This quote from State Senator Schuyler Van Valkenburg really captures that disappointment. They truly believe this was the single biggest thing the state could have done to make housing more affordable for everybody. But hey, the session wasn't a total wash for housing advocates. So let's talk about what did work out. While that big zoning overhaul stalled, a bunch of other measures focused on preserving housing and providing financial support actually did get approved.
So what made it across the finish line? First, there's a right-of-first-refusal policy. This gives local governments the first crack at buying affordable apartment buildings that are up for sale so they can keep them affordable. They also created a new revolving loan fund to help finance mixed-income projects, and they pumped more money into a program that helps tenants avoid eviction.
Now, the key thing to get here is that these are all important wins. They give cities and counties more tools and more money to work with, but, and this is a really big but, they all have to operate within the existing local zoning rules. They don't fundamentally change the system to create more housing supply, which was the goal of that first big bill.
And all of that brings us to our final section, the unfinished debate.
So with one major bill on ice and several smaller ones passed, what does this all mean for the future of housing in Virginia?
Well, here's a crucial little detail. The Senate version of that main zoning bill wasn't actually killed off for good. It was sent back to a committee. That's a legislative move that's kind of like hitting the pause button. It tables the discussion for now, but it leaves the door wide open for lawmakers to bring it back and try again down the road.
Which leaves us with this final critical question. The housing crunch isn't going away. If anything, it's getting worse. So as that pressure keeps building, who is ultimately going to decide the future of Virginia's communities? Is it going to be top-down state mandates designed to force more supply? Or will it be the long-standing tradition of local control, shaping neighborhoods one decision at a time? For now, that debate is far from over.